Wine and Rum here, reporting from Galway. Yes, no, we're not going to talk about unnecessary journeys, and it's not a storm right now. If you know, you know. This is actually our second time in Galway. The first time we came here on something with the trip from Mohill. What was it again?
Like a bus tour on the west coast of Ireland with a few highlights, including Galway, and mostly stopping Galway to eat. So of course we had to come back to McDonald's to get some classic fish and chips. Galway is Ireland's fourth biggest town. Population is about 80,000, and actually around 20,000 people of the populations are students. That means about every fourth person in the town is a student. So it's definitely a university city. Galway is probably Ireland's most famous city after Dublin, and it's located on the west coast, sort of midway along the Wild Atlantic Way. It is quite different from Dublin, not just because it's on a different side of the coast, but also because it faces the Atlantic, which means the weather can be a bit more, shall we say, stormy. It certainly rains a lot more here, from what I've heard, and it is in the statistics. Galway County has, for 2019, the weather station with the most rain, so well done on that record, I suppose.
So we're in the Galway city centre here, standing next to the Corrib River. I'm sorry people, I will get these pronunciations right soon, but right here, this is the part of the river called the Salmon Veer, I think, because over there is the Salmon Veer Bridge. And one of the cool things about the cities that keep on evolving for Irish cities that I like is that right now they've got a plan to actually make this a sort of cycling path as well, because we're actually really close to the university.
Galway is also known as a city of culture. It has lots of theatres, any form of art, and most importantly perhaps, it has a lot of festivals. It's like there's almost a festival of the month kind of thing. Right now it's a Christmas market, but it always draws people back with different festivals at different times of the year. Galway is also a centre of any kind of arts as Gaelta. I hope I got that right. So basically an Irish language centre for also theatre, radio, film, all kinds of different types of media. So if you're into culture, it's definitely an interesting place to check out around different times of the year. Or if you live here, it's a benefit that there is constantly changing events. There's always something new.
As you can already see from the B-roll, we went here during the time of the Christmas market, which takes place in Eyre Square. And just like the cafes, most of the people in it were young, but there were also families with their young children as well. Just like in Waterford, surrounding the square there are pedestrianised areas. Not as much as in Waterford, or are they actually continuous? So when you're walking, I would look out for traffic, because sometimes, based on the cobblestone road network, it can be a bit harder to tell where the road ends and where the pedestrian area starts. One thing the city centre does have is lots of options for eating. And we're not talking about, if there's one pizza place or one cafe, that's where you go. There are multitudes of them, from your franchises or independent eateries, just they're existing in the same area. There are also a wide array of shops, malls, and pretty much the city centre is your one-stop shop. And if you're not in the city centre, just a little drive away, or walk for us, there's also a retail park, where you've got these large complexes of all the stores you want. Just if you stand in a circle and turn around 360 degrees, you're going to see an Aldi, a Lidl, a Dunes, pet stores, cinemas, everything you want just in that one place. As for green spaces, I really love how the city has made use of their riverside and coastline. There are some lovely walks right in these areas that are nice, calm and peaceful, and do give you an opportunity to just get away from that hustle and bustle, sit and relax. Hello, hello. Look at all this water.
There's a path to an island. That's where you'll find us.
One of the things we saw both in the morning, in the afternoon, in fact any time of day, were people outside walking and making use of these areas. usually walking their dogs but also taking their morning walks or their jogs at whatever time of the day. One of these walks we took from near the south of the city all the way to a place called Salt Hill, which isn't actually that far, but it's not just views you get. At the end of this walk, which it's not actually the end, it continues, but this is where we stop. You have your eateries and foods, all this sort of stuff, so you can go and get something to eat and replenish yourself on the way. Besides the many college students that live in the city, I do feel like a lot of families and such live in more of the suburbs, on the outskirts of the city. We also have this satellite town that we recognise called Oranmore. That seems to be a place where people would commute in to the city from. People in these areas seem to just use the city to work or just to go shopping or get a bite to eat. Life does seem kind of rushed out here. We expected a bit more tranquility from a seaside city, but that doesn't seem to be what we found here. With more time here, maybe we could pick up more of the vibe of the city, but for right now, it does feel like a very busy place.
In terms of accommodation, Galway is very different to the other towns we've visited so far. As I've mentioned, it's a student town, hence it makes sense that most of the buildings are actually apartments. It's about a 50-50 split between houses and apartments, more skewed towards the apartments. Still, it can be quite tricky to find somewhere to rent. Galway is actually considered the second most expensive city to rent in Ireland, and the average rent is about €1,300 per month. Now, it is different to Dublin in the sense that you get a bigger place for €1,300 per month, but considering that, well, if you're a student, you probably don't or have a very small salary, but even if you're here working for maybe one of the headquartered companies that they have a few of, salaries aren't necessarily as competitive as in Dublin, which in proportion does make it very expensive to rent. It's much easier to buy a house if, of course, you can afford the deposit and all of that, but generally there is a lot more houses to buy than to rent in Galway. House prices start around 120k, and most of them are around between 200-280k, which is still a lot cheaper than Dublin, but also depends on the age of the house, since a lot of the houses were built in the 80s or 90s. For more modern developments, those usually happen on the suburbs or the community villages like Oranmore.
Galway was really too big for us to capture a vibe of it over a couple days. Galway's cost of living isn't going to be extraordinarily cheaper than Dublin, but it is cheaper. But the city is compact, and it feels like you don't need to dig deep to find those hidden gems of experience. And it's also just gorgeous. It rained most of the time we were there, but the glimpses of the sunsets we got were beyond our expectation. If you're looking for an alternative to Dublin, Galway, and probably the towns in its commuter belt, make a compelling choice. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can see more of the places we've visited in our Where to Live in Dublin series. Bye for now.